Let me ask you something direct. If your car broke down tomorrow, not a flat tire, a real transmission level failure, could you cover it without touching your savings? If you hesitated even for a second, don't skip this one. What I'm about to show you explains exactly why that hesitation happens, and it has almost nothing to do with how much you've saved. There's a number quietly wrecking retirements right now, and it's not the number anyone warns you about. It's not a market crash. It's not some six-figure catastrophe sitting in a headline somewhere. It's roughly $500 a month. That's it. That's the entire distance between someone who feels genuinely secure heading into retirement and someone who is one unexpected bill away from real trouble. And it shows up so consistently across so many completely different households that it stops looking like bad luck and starts looking like something structural, something almost nobody has actually named out loud. Here's the part that should bother you a little. This happens to careful, responsible people. People who avoided debt, people who saved consistently for 30 years, people who paid off the house, contributed to the 401k every single year, never carried a balance they couldn't explain, and they still end up exactly $500 short of feeling safe. Not because they did something wrong, because nobody ever told them this gap existed in the first place. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly why that gap forms. You'll know how to find your own number in about 30 minutes tonight, and you'll walk away with a real step-by-step system to close it, not vague advice, an actual method. So if you've ever looked at your bank account and felt like something invisible was working against you quietly in the background, this is that thing. Let's get into it. Here's what the gap actually means in numbers you can picture. Imagine someone in their late 50s or 60s, already retired or close to it. The mortgage is mostly handled. There's some savings sitting in an account. Social Security is either underway or close to starting. On the surface, the picture looks stable. If you ask this person how they're doing financially, they'd say fine, and they'd mean it. But sit down with the real monthly numbers, not an estimate, the actual figures pulled from bank statements, and a familiar pattern appears almost every single time. Income covers expenses, but only just. There's no cushion, no absorption capacity built in anywhere. If insurance rises, if a roof leaks, if a grandchild needs help, if fuel costs climb for 2 straight months, the entire slack in the system disappears immediately with nothing behind it to catch the fall. That's the gap. The distance between covering your bills on a normal month and being able to withstand a bad month without consequence. It's not about being broke. It's about being one ordinary, unremarkable month away from broke permanently without ever realizing it until it happens. And I want to be very clear about something because it's tempting to hear all this and think, well, they should have saved more. That's not what's happening here. This gap forms because almost all retirement planning fixates on one giant number. You need this much saved by the time you retire, while completely ignoring the ordinary monthly math that actually determines whether someone sleeps well at night for the next 20 or 30 years. Hitting a savings target and having a livable monthly cash flow are two entirely different problems. Almost nobody plans for the second one on purpose. Most people don't even know it's a separate problem until they're already living inside it. So why does this happen even to careful people? There are 4 forces working quietly in the background, and once you hear them, you will recognize at least 2 or 3 in your own life immediately. Force number 1, expenses climb while income stays flat. A mortgage may be fixed, good. A pension, if there is one, is fixed too. Social Security gets modest annual adjustments that are supposed to track inflation, but in practice, they rarely keep pace with what things actually cost day to day. Groceries, utilities, basic services. Meanwhile, property taxes rise reliably every single year, and insurance across the board, home, auto, and especially health, increases almost without exception, whether you filed a claim or not. So you end up with a household where income is essentially frozen in place, and every single category of expense is quietly climbing the stairs behind it, one step at a time, every year, forever. Force number 2, so-called one-time costs are not actually one-time, and this might be the single biggest blind spot in retirement planning. A dental procedure that insurance doesn't fully cover, a water heater finally giving out, a roof repair, an adult child or grandchild needing help during a rough patch, a car repair that's bigger than an oil change. Each one in isolation feels like a random, unlucky event, something that just happened to you this year. But track this across 3 or 4 years in a row and you'll notice something uncomfortable. Something in this category shows up almost every single year, without fail. Not every 3 years, not every 5, almost every year. These aren't the exception to the plan. They are the plan, whether anyone ever budgeted for them or not. Force number 3, small recurring payments quietly stack up until they become a real weight. A car payment here, a credit card minimum there, a buy now pay later plan for a mattress or a new phone, a subscription or two that auto-renews without a second thought. None of these look dangerous alone. A $40 charge, a $60 payment. Nobody panics over any single one. But add 3 or 4 of these together, and it's remarkably easy to find $600, $700, even $800 a month routed straight into debt service and recurring charges. Money that used to have options attached to it, now permanently locked into payments with zero flexibility. And force number 4, the plan gets built once, usually a few years before retirement, and then it basically never gets revisited. Someone sits down, maybe with a spreadsheet, maybe with an advisor, builds a budget that looks completely reasonable at the time, and then just runs on that plan for the next decade or two, unchanged. But life doesn't hold still. Costs shift, health needs change, family circumstances change. The plan, though, stays frozen exactly where it was the day it was written. The gap doesn't appear all at once in some dramatic single event. It builds in small increments. $5 here, $20 there, until one day the cushion that used to exist has quietly disappeared and nobody can point to the exact moment it happened. Put those 4 forces together and you get exactly the pattern we opened with. Careful, responsible people who did all the sensible things and still ended up roughly $500 short of actually feeling secure. Not because of one mistake, but because of 4 slow, invisible pressures compounding at the exact same time, in the background for years. Let me make this concrete, because numbers in the abstract never land the same way as numbers attached to an actual life. Picture a couple in their early 60s, house paid off, social security, plus a modest pension covering roughly $4,000 a month. Their fixed expenses, housing, utilities, groceries, basic insurance, run about $3,200 a month. On paper, that's an $800 cushion. That looks fine. Honestly, that looks better than fine. Then the real expenses show up, the way they always do. A cracked tooth needs a crown. Insurance covers half. New brakes and a battery, the same season. Homeowners insurance renews with an 11% increase because regional storm claims went up, not because this couple did anything wrong at all. Health premiums tick up again in January, the way they do most years, like clockwork. Add it all up and that $800 cushion is now functioning like $200 most months, and negative in some. Nothing dramatic happened here, no single bad decision, just the ordinary unremarkable cost of being alive, landing all at once, the way it quietly always does. That's the $500 gap in real terms for a completely ordinary household. Not a crisis, not a headline. A slow squeeze that never gets named until someone finally sits down and does the actual math. And it's worth being precise about what this isn't. It's not primarily a market problem. It's not primarily a spending problem. And it is absolutely not a knowledge problem. What's usually missing isn't financial literacy. It's a system built specifically to absorb the predictable unpredictability of retirement, which is exactly what we're building right now, together, for the rest of this video. Why 500 specifically and not 200 and not 1,000? That number tends to cover 3 very specific things once you break it down. It covers a meaningful monthly contribution toward an emergency fund, enough that a bad month doesn't spiral into a bad year. It covers the typical year-over-year increase across insurance premiums, home, auto, and health combined. A number most people underestimate until they actually stack up the renewal notices side by side. And it covers just enough margin to say yes to something, a grandchild's birthday, a weekend trip, a nice dinner out, without guilt or fear attached to that yes. It is not a life-changing sum of money. That's the entire point. It's small enough that closing it is realistic, not aspirational, which is exactly why the system I'm about to hand you actually works instead of just sounding good. Here is the system. 5 steps in order. I genuinely encourage you to do these rather than just listen. The entire value here lives in the doing, not the knowing. Step 1. Get your real number. Before you change a single thing about your spending, spend 30 focused minutes writing down your actual monthly income, against your actual monthly expenses. Every subscription, every bill, every recurring charge, with no rounding down, no, that's probably about right. Pull up the real statements. Most people, when they finally do this properly, discover they've been underestimating their own spending by a couple $100 a month, simply from forgetting the small stuff. The streaming services, the app subscriptions, the annual renewal that hits once a year and quietly gets forgotten in between. You cannot close a gap you haven't measured. This step is not optional, and it's not something to skip because it feels tedious. Step 2. Go after the quiet drains before you touch anything you actually enjoy. This is where most people get it completely backwards. The instinct when money feels tight is to cut the things that make life worth living. The dinners out, the hobby, the occasional trip. That approach almost never sticks because nobody sustains a joyless budget for the next 15 or 20 years of their life. It survives about 3 weeks and then quietly falls apart. Instead, target the recurring low visibility drains first. Start with interest payments, because interest is pure loss with zero benefit attached to it. Even directing an extra $50 to $100 a month toward your highest interest balance will typically save you far more than that over the course of a year. Then hunt down forgotten subscriptions and small recurring charges. Most people, when they actually look, are paying for at least 1 or 2 services they no longer use or genuinely forgot they signed up for. This is essentially found money sitting in plain sight. Then reshop insurance that hasn't been compared in years. Auto and home insurance pricing shifts constantly behind the scenes, and staying loyal to the same provider is rarely rewarded the way people assume. A single comparison call, maybe an hour of your time, total, can often save $30 to $60 a month with zero change to your actual coverage or your day-to-day life. Step 3. Redirect the savings. Don't just let them evaporate back into daily spending. This is a mistake I see constantly. Someone successfully frees up $400 or $500 a month through steps like these, and 6 months later, that money is simply gone, absorbed invisibly into slightly higher spending everywhere else, with nothing to show for the effort. Every dollar you recover needs an assignment the moment you find it. Split it roughly in half. Half goes directly into a dedicated emergency cash account, kept separate from your everyday checking so it's not sitting there tempting you every time you glance at your balance. The other half goes into something that actually grows over time. A simple, low-risk investment account is enough to start. The specific vehicle matters less right now than the habit itself. Every dollar needs a destination the instant it's freed up, or it will quietly disappear back into daily life within a few months, guaranteed. Step 4. Budget on purpose for the expense that always shows up instead of treating it as a surprise every single time. Remember the pattern from earlier, the dental bill, the water heater, the car repair. Instead of reacting to these as emergencies, build a specific monthly line item for them in advance. Even $100 to $150 a month set aside specifically for the thing that always happens converts next year's crisis into next year's expected, already budgeted for expense. That mental shift alone, from surprise to expected, removes a genuinely enormous amount of ongoing stress even before the money itself makes any practical difference at all. Step 5. Review the entire plan every 90 days, not once a year. This is the step almost everyone skips, and it's the single step that actually prevents the gap from quietly reforming after you've closed it. Every 3 months, block out 20 minutes and check a short list of questions. Did any bill increase since the last check-in? Did a new charge or subscription sneak in without you noticing? Is the emergency fund actually growing the way it's supposed to be? A quarterly review catches small changes while they're still small and easy to fix, instead of discovering in month 11 that the entire gap has silently come back and you're right back where you started, wondering what happened again. Now I want to be honest with you about the timeline, because overpromising helps absolutely nobody watching this. This system will not close a $500 gap in a single month. For most people, based on what I've seen play out again and again, it takes somewhere between 3 and 6 months of steady, unglamorous, frankly, kind of boring adjustments, a subscription cancelled here, an insurance rate renegotiated there, a little less money paid out in interest, a little more redirected on purpose toward the 2 buckets we just talked through. But here's the pattern worth remembering, and honestly, worth writing down somewhere you'll see it again. The people who actually close this gap for good are almost never the ones who made one big, dramatic change. They're the ones who executed 5 or 6 small, unremarkable actions consistently and then simply kept the habit running quietly in the background. It's not exciting. Nobody's telling a thrilling story about their 90-day review at a dinner party. But it compounds, both the actual dollars saved and, just as importantly, the sense of stability that comes along with it, month after month, until one day you realize you're not doing the math out of fear anymore. And that stability is really the entire point of everything we just covered. It was never really about having an extra $500 sitting in an account somewhere. It's about no longer lying awake at night running through what happens if the car breaks down, or the roof starts leaking, or insurance jumps again at the next renewal. It's the difference between spending the next 20 years managing a life that's always one step behind you and actually being able to say yes to your life without a knot in your stomach every single time. So here's exactly what to do, starting this week, not someday down the road, not when things settle down. Write down your real numbers, all of them, without rounding down. Pick one quiet drain, one subscription, one interest payment, one insurance policy, and actually deal with it today before you close this video. Open a separate account specifically for your emergency cushion if you don't already have one sitting there, and set a recurring reminder 90 days from today to sit down and check in on all of it, no exceptions. That's the entire starting point. It's not complicated, and it was never supposed to be. It just has to be consistent, week after week, quarter after quarter, until it's simply how you operate. Now here's the thing. Closing this gap is really only half of the full plan. The other half is exactly where that growth money should actually go once it's redirected, so that one bad month never has the power to wreck years of progress you've already built. In the next video, I'm breaking down the full 3-bucket system, splitting what comes in between emergency cash, stable income, and long-term growth, so no single surprise ever threatens the whole plan again. Hit subscribe right now so you don't miss it, because I genuinely believe it might matter even more than today's video did. And before you go, tell me down in the comments, have you already found your own $500 gap somewhere in your numbers? Or are you only realizing it right now watching this? I read every single comment on these videos personally, and there's a very good chance someone else watching this exact video right now needs to see your answer today. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.